Hey, how's it going? Today is February 13th, 2017, and you're sitting in with me, Tony. And this is the first edition of High Times with Tony. So, yeah, just want to preface this by saying that if you are, oh no, I'm really new to this whole live stream thing, but that's why this is the first episode. So, wanted to preface everything by saying, if you are watching this at home and you are under 18 years of age, and please do not try anything of this at home. I already can't speak, but I wanted to come out with a new segment. It's going to be a little short. I'm kind of rambling already, but all I wanted to do was smoke a little weed. And again, a little disclaimer: I have a medical marijuana card, so I can smoke marijuana. If you do not have a medical card or are doing so in a country where the substance is illegal, I warn you to take heed and take caution. So, this is High Times with Tony. I'm just going to be smoking some weed, checking out some articles, talking about some stuff. Hopefully, it gets more mellow as time goes on, and hopefully, there's a little humor in it as well. Um, yeah, so just trying to see if there's anybody actually checking this out. I don't even know how to do that. Whatever. So I'm gonna drink a little coffee, smoke my weed to start out the segment, and then let's talk about legalizing drugs. Hopefully this gets a little more smooth as I go on with this. So yeah, let's smoke some weed. Right now I am smoking some kosher kush, which I have gotten from the Canna Clinic in Toronto, Ontario. It's here's a little view of it. A little bit left I have in my grinder. I don't have a lot left, so I'm going to be smoking out of this Black Beauty. And yeah, let's get a little high. So yeah, I got a medical marijuana card maybe about a year ago. Haven't really talked about it, but figured weed is kind of a big part of my life. Why not introduce it on my new segment, High Times with Tony? I won't get too into it, but that was a good smoke. I apologize for being a little frantic earlier, but I haven't done this live streaming stuff too much, and I was playing around with some settings. I had set a scheduled time at like 4 p.m. Figured it was good with roll over to 4:20 p.m. And if you smoke weed, you might understand that reference. And maybe if you don't smoke weed, you might understand that reference as well. But anyway, so yeah, I'm getting a little high. I can't remember what I was talking about, but yeah, it was a little confusing. There's a lot going on in my head, and I was rambling. So hopefully it's a little slower and more easy to follow along with. Hopefully this is some enjoyable content. I have no idea. If it's not, don't watch it. I really don't care. But yeah. So for the first episode of High Times with Tony, I wanted to talk about the issue of legalization of drugs. Now, I live in Canada, and for anybody who is Canadian or is aware of current events in Canadian politics. We have a new Prime Minister named Justin Trudeau, and one of his campaign promises was to legalize marijuana. He had put in together a task force, and they spent a good part of a year doing research and backwork analysis to figure out the best way to implement the legalization of marijuana and marijuana exclusively, as far as I understand. So, as far as I've read up, they have come to the conclusion that it would be best to legalize it for anybody 18 years and older. And I believe they're looking into retail avenues such as liquor stores. If you live in Ontario, um, then you would know our liquor is controlled pretty heavily. So, uh, weed, marijuana might be the same here, but it's been promised to be legalized by the end of this year, 2017. So, I'm now currently living in a country that it is not legal, but it is on a path to become legal, and we can see what comes of that. But today we're talking about just the issue of legalization of drugs in general, and there was a article I saw that I guess inspired me to make this first episode of High Times with Tony. Um, just how the Brazil Supreme Court judge calls for drug legalization to be gangs, and pretty much, as far as I understood, they wanted to legalize marijuana and cocaine to kind of remove gang violence in a sense, because when you I used to be very fascinated with this stuff. I had actually dated a Mexican girl a while back, and I was really fascinated with the whole cartel thing. Her being from Mexico, she had told me a little bit about it, and apparently it used to be a lot worse to live out in the perimeter areas, like farming towns and whatnot. And since there was a ton of cartel violence, a lot of people started moving inwards to the big cities, and so it was safer there. But because a lot of people had moved in, a lot of the violence had now come into the city, and more people started moving outwards again. So I was very fascinated by this phenomena, I guess, where there's kind of an increase of violence wherever the cartels are. And I had done a lot of looking into of black market economies and money laundering and all that good stuff. And oh man, I'm having a high Tony moment. But essentially, when you, I remembered what I was going to say, but when you have, there's different markets, right? There's like white, clean markets that are federally regulated and have certain rules and policies that govern them. Like stock exchanges, for example, like they are a way of doing business, but they're quite heavily regulated. And should you want to get into the business of stocks, you kind of have to follow within the rules. But then on the flip side of the coin, there's black market activity, and whether something is legal or not, I think does not necessarily have a direct correlation with real demand of any given product or service. So even prostitution, for example, that is illegal in many countries, but there's still a demand and a supply for it. So when there's no real when you're not doing something within the lines of the lines of the law become a lot more blurred, and I think there's a greater incentive to break more laws because, for example, if you're producing cocaine, or for example, and you're selling a certain amount of cocaine, say 1 kilogram, and the punishment is X punishment, going to jail, and for a certain amount of years, you have no incentive to produce high quality coke. You might have an incentive in that you might produce higher profits from certain clients we want really high quality cocaine, but in the end, if you have 1 kilogram of shitty cocaine or really high quality cocaine, you'll still face the same punishment, right? So there's a lot of economics involved in that. You to face the same fine necessarily, you might not commit, like, you can commit greater crimes but still get the same punishment, right? Because you're still selling cocaine, but you might be giving really bad quality cocaine and putting health in danger as well. Not that drugs are already bad for health, but yeah, it's there's less of an incentive to produce high quality cocaine, right? So, say the government had legalized cocaine and they had put regulations on it in like a white economy where they say you cannot sell cocaine unless it meets certain quality requirements, right? So I think that's an argument for the legalization of drugs, is that there's better quality on it, and you don't necessarily legalization doesn't equivalate with easier access necessarily, because ask any kid, at least from around where I'm from, what's harder to get as a minor, like weed or alcohol? And I guess it depends who you hang out with and whatnot. But because our alcohol is so heavily regulated, it's very hard to get a lot of times. So minors, unless they have parents or somebody who can buy it for them, or they're willing to steal it from their parents, they have a hard time getting it. Whereas the guy down the street's not going to discriminate how old they are. They just come up to them with cash and want to buy some weed. So I've always been in favor of the legalization of drugs, just because you can put that once you legalize something, you can control it a lot better, and not to mention you can make a lot of money off of it, right? Because right now it's illegal, and you're putting a lot of that money into the hands of cartels, and they can do whatever the hell they want essentially when they have so much money and so much power and resources. They can get away with infinitely anything pretty much. That's why they commit so much violence. It's what's the incentive not to, essentially, when there's a few people of the thousands who will just get knocked off and they can keep doing it. So I think the legalization is like the last battle of the violence, right? Because if you take away if you start making it legal and the cartels can't start selling it at such cheap prices, and they don't have such a monopoly over the production and supply of these drugs, then they can't commit these crimes and do the things that they are doing. So that's why I kind of I'm in favor of legalization of drugs, not just marijuana, but cocaine and heroin, and not that I advocate doing any of those things, but I just think legalizing gives you better control over stuff, and that's I think in the end you want, as a taxpayer, you want to know that your taxes are going to benefiting the economy and the greater social benefit of everybody. Not that you're spending a ton of your tax benefits putting so much effort into fighting drugs and drug people who use drugs, but potentially we could take the money away from the cartels who are so violent and use that money, make it legal, gain even more tax money off of that, and we can use that money for health programs on addiction and that kind of stuff. And yeah, so that's what I think. That's what Tony thinks about legalization. Don't know how long that video had run, but hopefully I might have said something that you agreed with or disagreed with. Love to hear some opinions about it. Don't want to keep this very long since it was my first episode. Just wanted to get a feel for the general format and feel of my first live stream slash podcast show, High Times with Tony. So let me know what you thought. Let me know what you want to see in the future for other episodes. Maybe a Drunk Times with Tony too. That could be cool. I also wanted to have more guests and stuff on over a longer period of time, depending who would want to be on and what kind of stuff could be talked about. So yeah, make sure you comment, like, and subscribe, and share the videos, because it's always cool to see more people check them out. So Yeah, see you later.